Testing. Perfect. How you guys doing? Let's do it. We're actually on time for once. Thank God. Where's this podium? All right, cool, awesome. So for those of you who don't know both of you, I would like each of you guys to tell us a little bit more about FICO, tell us a little bit more about UF Ventures, kind of give a little bit more color, flavor, and a little bit more about your day-to-day.
Sure. My name is Brian Maudsley. I'm the Deputy CIO at FICO, which is the University of Florida Investment Corporation. We're responsible for managing the investable assets on behalf of the University of Florida. So we invest for three main pockets of capital here. Number one, as you'll probably know us for, is the endowment, which is held by the University of Florida Foundation. Number two is the University of Florida operating assets. And then number three is the University of Florida Health, or UF Health, operating assets. And so we are a separate entity. We are a team of about 11 or 12 of us that are a wholly owned corporation by the university, and our clients are only UF-related entities. On the investment side, we have a team of 7. We have our CIO, myself, we have 2 directors, and then 3 senior analysts. About half of our assets are kind of the sleepy operating assets that we invest, which are very fixed income oriented, safety, security, that we're looking for some yield, just for the operation of the university, operations of UF Health. The other half of the assets, that's ones with a little more fun. That's kind of our long-term operating, long-term reserves, you could say, or the endowment assets. And that's where we take a typical endowment model. We don't invest in individual securities. We don't do our own analysis. We don't read 10Ks or 10Qs. We are not underwriting individual companies. We find specialist managers that we partner with. So for this audience, we would be the investors into the venture funds that would then be investing into the individual, founder-led companies. So our day-to-day is a little different. We're spending a lot of time looking at managers of capital. We are looking at putting together portfolios. We are looking from public equities on down to venture capital. So it's across the board that we do.
Amazing, thank you. I heard you taking a look at 161 Ventures. Jackson, a little bit more about UF Ventures and your role.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you guys for doing this.
Thank you both for being
Justice
here.
and Pablo. I remember it was about, 4, maybe 5 years ago when you guys reached out, took me to coffee, and said, we're going to start a venture fund. I thought, quite honestly, that's a bit precocious. But, there was something about you guys, the grit and that founder determination that you guys emanate. And look where we're at today. You've actually done it. It's just incredible, right? And so you're definitely a part of the Florida, venture innovation ecosystem, and across the country now too. So congratulations.
Thank you so much, Jackson.
So I'm Jackson Streeter. I run a venture capital fund for University of Florida. Jamie Dimon said that earlier this year on CNBC that universities are the core of innovation, and that's what separates the United States from the rest of the world. And that's really true. Right? If you think about what new technologies can you think of that really didn't probably start at a research institution or one of the universities. And so Florida's a great place for that. There's about $2.5 billion of publicly funded research per year in Florida. Here at UF, we do $1.2 billion of that. So, and good ideas can come from anywhere. They come from across the state as well. So we recently acquired the Scripps Research Institute that I always like to talk about because it's a world-class center of biomedical innovation down in Jupiter, is now part of UF as well. So UF, here we are in the sort of the epicenter of UF here in the right stream, right? One of the core principles, the 6 core pillars of UF is discovery and innovation. And so it's one thing to just put that up there, and so what do you really do with it? What do you back that up? One of your core principles, do you actually back it up? And UF has done a really punches above its weight in backing that up. So what do I mean by that? 29 years ago, the university invested $5.5 million to build a biotech incubator in Alachua, Florida, Sid Martin Biotech Incubator. That's been recognized now more than once as the #1 biotech incubator in the world. So that's incredible, right? Literally nothing there 29 years ago. So I don't know how many of you have been to Alachua, Florida, but I encourage any of you who haven't been to go up there And just look around and imagine what that place was like 29 years ago when UF put the footprint down there. And now you see an entire area up in Alachua called Progress District. There's a whole biotech industry that's developed out there. There's been 4 companies that have gone public out there, thousands of high-paying, clean tech type jobs, and a whole ecosystem that goes all the way from, and it's not just the university, there's sort of other things that make an ecosystem work. One is the local government, super supportive up there in Alachua County to develop that ecosystem. Capital that you mentioned earlier, right? And that's been something that Florida, when I came here in 2010, still is really lacking, I would say. That is changing dramatically. I mean, you look at what's going on with the capital influx, with new funds. When I came here from San Diego and I told to run a University of Florida spin-out company and got recruited here in 2010. And a banker friend of mine told me, you know, that's a really dumb career move. What are you doing in Florida? Why don't you go to, Silicon Valley or Massachusetts or something? That same banker has an office in Palm Beach now, right? So that's how the state has changed. This is a great place to be. There's a crest of capital and innovation happening in the state that's just on the way up. So I'm like a presidential candidate. I'm not even answering your question.
So what do you think about the economy? No, that was a great answer. I'm actually glad that you touched on some of that stuff because, when we travel all across the country, we're always screaming like Gainesville, UF, and then they're like, what the fuck is there? And I'm like, excuse my language, my French. But I always explain it like, UF is the brain for the state of Florida. Out of that 2.5, 1.2 comes out of here, out of the buildings and research. I mean, FINS, Florida Institute of National Security, Florida Semiconductor Institute, right? All the research is happening here. So when people are like, why are you in Gainesville, right? I'm not just like trying to hang out downtown and go get drunk. It's, a college town, but there's a lot of research, there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of great founders. So that's why we come back. So back to you, Brian. A lot of people want to get into VC, a lot of people want to get into PE, there's a lot of aspiring investors and people who have funds. But, working at the endowment, I feel like is just such a unique position, and I don't think that there's, a lot of big endowments at that size. So what was like your path to this? What made you want to do always wake up when you were 7 years old and was like, hey, I want to run the U.S. endowment? And how did that kind of like come about, your path?
So I was listening to Brian's talk earlier, and I heard him talking about how we always need to do the top salesman. It was in my second year of college. I tried doing sales, and I was trying to sell like steak knives door to door. I realized quickly it was not for me.
Was it Cutco?
Yes. So I realized quickly I am not a salesman. So I have never been on your side of the table. I've always been on my side, which has been in investing. So numbers are just always something I've been interested in. Eventually, I graduated college in 2002. And then I got my MBA, I graduated in 2008. And so I have this knack for graduating in recessions. And so if I ever go back to school, let me watch out. But, I grew up in a house that education was valued. It was very important. My mother's a public school teacher, my sister's a public school teacher, my uncle's a public school teacher. And so putting together things that that really meant something to me, while also doing something I was very good at was important. And so I've had a journey of moving from, I started out at a family office in early 2000s, not knowing what a family office was at the time, had no idea if they could even pay my salary or whatever, but it was interesting. And I tried that, and I got a little more specific, and I eventually went to a quant firm, and then eventually I went and I did high yield fundamental analysis, reading 10Ks and 10Qs, and I realized this is not what I want to do either. So I moved back to the allocator role. I found something that means something to me, and so every day I can walk in and really enjoy my day. I can feel like I have an impact on society. I can feel like I can, somebody's day better by just doing my work on a day-to-day basis. And so, that's what I would say was, really important for me, was to find something I like and something that means something to someone else.
That's awesome. And what do you like the most? FICO, the family office, or the quant firm?
So we moved down here in 2013 for a 2-year stint with my wife, and we've now hit year 11. So
nice.
We've been stuck here ever since. Independence is a good stuck, and so UF. I didn't go to UF, but I see myself as kind of a gator, kind of by fire.
Oh, you're definitely
I've been here for a very long time. The university's been fantastic for me. It's a wonderful ecosystem to be a part of, and getting to know, the successful alum in the investment industry. They're nothing but passionate for the university, and it's just something that's been really a great experience. And so UFICO has been a fantastic role, responsibility for myself on a day-to-day basis, knowing that we have an impact on so many lives.
That's awesome. I love that. So now, Jackson, over to you. So you were an entrepreneur, the director of UF Ventures, and UF Innovate, and then also a partner at Deepwater Capital. You're an angel investor, do a lot of stuff. So tell me, how does this kind of craft your decision-making analysis as far as an investor, right? Because you're on both sides of the table. So, tell us a little bit more about how that story and that journey kind of molded you.
Yeah, and I would say what's important to me is looking at things that are really going to change the world, right? So I'm a physician by background, so I think about patients that are at shams right now that need new solutions, right? Desperately. And so it's great to work on things that can really be important to people, outside from just making return on capital, right? Which is also important.
Right.
There's so much is known about Gatorade here, but the type of things that come out of UF are pretty extraordinary. I'd say I'm even more impressed, more than Gatorade by far, is the whole field of gene therapy, which I'm sure most of you have heard about. You have a defective gene, you can deliver a gene into a patient now, and that gene can cure a disease like pediatric blindness or lots of other diseases. There's billions of dollars of research being done around the world in gene therapy now. What people don't know is the delivery vehicle for those genes was originally sequenced at UF.
Wow, I didn't know.
So yeah, nobody knows that, right? I think we could do a lot better job of getting our word out there, right? So I look at the life science deals at Deepwater Capital for the Florida Opportunity Fund, really Florida-focused investments. The fund that I run here at UF, we can invest in companies that are developing technologies as long as they have a license from the University of Florida. So we have companies all the way in Bilbao, Spain to California. One note I echo what Brian said, is that Gainesville was very good to my family. When we came here from San Diego, we weren't sure about the decision. Quite honestly, the best sale I ever did was selling my wife to leave California to come to Gainesville. But fast forward, we'd never go back to California, honestly. This is a great place to be. It's a great place to raise kids, and it's a great innovation community. So.
I just wish there was a beach. That'd make it perfect. Cool. So, random, quite crazy question just thought of. If each of you guys, any point in time in history, could write a check into any company, what would it be?
Well, this is not so random because you teed it up like any good moderator. So, anyway, I thought about this on the right end. I thought, well, it's the way I interpret that is, could I be an angel and magically become an angel investor in anybody's company? And George Washington started this distillery and had his own company. And I thought, how cool would that be to meet George Washington and invest in his distillery startup? So that's my answer.
That's a good one. Free booze, hopefully, for investors.
So I'll flip it into my world, which is invest in a fund that I could. And so you think about all the great, venture capital funds that have been around for starting back in the 80s or the 90s, and everybody wants to be in the benchmarks or the Sequoias or founder fund. And it's really amazing how success creates success, and it's just this flywheel effect. And so what I would say is actually the more fun is finding who's going to be that next successful venture. And so, on a day-to-day basis, we're always looking for who we're going to be the next Sequoias, or who we're going to be the next index, or who are going to be the next founder funds. And it's not easy, but finding those is really the day-to-day work that we do. So finding the next 161 or whatever it may be, they may have that chance to really create that ability to create success.
Nice. I love that. Thank you so much. That's an amazing answer. So for each of you guys, obviously investing is really tough. What was one investment or one deal that, was a big learning lesson, didn't play out how you thought it would?
Well, I think I learned about investing on the entrepreneur side of the equation, right? So I learned, I was evaluating a technology for the US Navy in the mid-90s and left the military, was having a perfectly satisfying career there. To found a company, went down to Barnes & Noble and bought a book on how to write a business plan. So just didn't know anything. And so kind of learning what the lesson learned there was, what do investors really want to see? Right? They want to see that you understand the customer, and we've heard about that several times. And we analyze it. You have Innovate. We have 100,000 square foot incubator systems here, about 60 clients, and that commitment to discovery and innovation also involves like trying to help these companies succeed. And the number one reason that companies don't succeed is they don't understand the customer in the market. So I think from the investor perspective is that do the entrepreneurs really understand the customer in the market? Not just what they think the market needs, but have they gone out and talked to people? And if they haven't, that's concerning.
You know, for us, I think the biggest lesson learned for us over time has just been focused on the long term. You know, one of the biggest mistakes that we've made over time at FICO has been not having a long enough focus. We're investing in the endowment, which is perpetual in nature. It is here to give benefit to students and to faculty and staff today, and it needs to give that same benefit a year from now and the same benefit 100 years from now. You know, these are perpetual assets, and so, you know, focus on the long term is really important. And so there's this kind of saying that came up recently. It was, you know, focus on the compass, not on the clock. And so don't worry about your quarterly earnings. Don't worry about your next, you know, short-term goal. Like, make sure you know you're going in the right direction. And I think that that's something that'll, you know, guide you over the long term.
I'm going to use that. That was great. Focus on the compass, not the clock. I'm going to coin it. I'll give you credit. So, Brian, for you at FICO, I feel like it's you know, so much is behind closed doors, and you know, can you demystify a little bit about like the thesis, the process, right? Like how you guys run the operation itself internally. I'm curious to know myself. It's just I try to look at it more, and I'm like, I don't even know what's going on here. So.
Yeah, it's not something that you can really easily put on paper. You know, half of our assets are kind of the boring ones, which are the yield, fixed income focus. On the long-term pool, it's really about, and that's the endowment assets in essence, it's about investing over the long term. And so because we don't invest into individual companies or otherwise, you know, we invest in people. And that's, you know, our job is to do due diligence, to really set up alignments of interest with our fund manager so that we are both moving along in the same direction. We can trust each other. You know, guardrails, obviously, whether it be legal documents or otherwise, or making sure that they're investing alongside us. But really, it's just learning about people. We spend a lot of time doing references. It's getting to know who it is that you're going to be partnering with. And that's across all strategies. It's really hard to do when you invest in a private fund because it's a blind pool of assets. You're giving into a pool of assets that will become something, and you have no idea what you're buying. And so we spend a lot of time just talking about what it is that we want out of the team of people. So one of the great, you know, questions you can ask, or that I ask people, is like, who was your first hire? And so if we're going into a venture capital firm and, you know, their first hire was, well, my first hire was my CFO. Okay, well, operations are important to you. Or my first hire was, you know, a third-party marketer. Well, you know, you're obviously here to raise money and try to make some, you know, you're trying to pad your bank account. You're not necessarily looking to build a business. So you can get to know people just by asking these questions about what it is they do and what's important to them. So the reason you don't see a lot of this, you know, on paper is it's different for every, you know, fund that we're investing in or every investment opportunity we're looking at. But really, it's a long-term process. We tend to spend weeks, months, years with potential investments to get to know them. So it's not something that's done quickly either.
Yeah, I feel like that's the best part about our job. Like seriously, the quant fund, honestly, like I would never, it'd kill me. I hate looking at numbers all day. The fun thing about our job is like it's very qualitative. We're in the people business and like building those relationships, getting to nurture them, seeing them over time. I mean, Jackson thought that we were absolutely batshit crazy. He's just like, who are you two? Get out of my office. Yeah, and then ended up working out. So thanks for the support, Jackson. You know, came into the fund. So I want to give an opportunity because we don't get a lot of you guys up on stage very often. I want to give an opportunity for a few questions. So amazing. First one, perfect. Quick on the trigger.
Thank you. Well, my name is Sebastian, so thank you guys for taking the time to come out here. My question is specifically for Brian. So what do you look for now in people, since you say kind of on the fund side of the endowment, looking for those companies or people to invest in specifically that will give that high return? what are you looking for in those people now versus when you first started? And what do you think made a difference in that, and getting like higher returns, or what the endowment is specifically looking for?
So it is different for every asset class, but if we focus specifically to venture, we've learned that there are certain things that we need to kind of use to guide our what we're seeking to invest, or who we're seeking to invest with. We're looking for smaller funds. Venture is not something that can scale. We're looking for, venture is a very high fail rate business. I think it's like Sequoia, something like half of their investments have lost money. And so you need somebody that's going to be willing to take a large investment, but also be a little more diversified in the portfolio. And so there are characteristics that we're looking for in individual funds that are being raised, but most important, when we're looking for the people, we're looking, do they have the experience? Do they have competitive advantage in their sweet spot? We look for something that we call their strike zone. What is it that kind of is the definition of the area that they're investing in, or the area that they are shopping around in? And what is it that makes them different from everybody else that gives them a leg up? And it could be anything. It could be a previous experience. It could be, an undergrad degree, or a graduate degree, or a PhD, or a patent, or something. But what is it that they've created to give themselves this competitive advantage? So there's no clean answer for that, but we need to find and understand what that strike zone is and why it's kind of walled off from relative to others.
Thank you.
Hello. What are the red flags that you'd be looking for if you were, say, investing in like a company? Anybody can answer this question.
So, I mean, very similar to what Brian invests in fund managers, and as venture investors, you invest primarily in CEOs. Integrity cannot ever be understated, right? I mean, the quickest way to walk away from a deal is if you find something's been hidden from you, that you discover in diligence, you're pretty much out, right? So there's plenty of deal flow, so you have to figure, if you think of it from the investor's point of view, if you see 100 deals to do 3, but you only have money for 1, how are you going to decide which one of those 3 to invest in? If they all have equally potential returns, let's say, you're going to base that decision almost certainly on the team and the people, right? So are they coachable? Integrity. You're going to spend a lot of time with these young companies, right? So all those sort of intangibles, I quantify that, it's very difficult, but they are all very, very important.
My name is Joel again. Thank you guys for coming out. You mentioned Gatorade before, and when it comes to like IP and things like that, how would you recommend someone who's building a physical product, who's hypothetically using some UF resources like a lab or something like that? How would you recommend that they navigate that process?
I would, Melissa, could you raise your hand? Melissa's one of the licensing officers here at UF, so she can, it's a sort of a long answer, I don't want to get into all of it, but she can be a great resource for you here today. One thing that's super important to mention, particularly around engineering and biopharmaceuticals, is intellectual property. So I was on a panel with some venture investors and faculty at Stanford several years ago, and we were talking about a small molecule that showed amazing preclinical results in oncology that never went forward because the grad student or somebody had published it and put it out there in the public domain, and it could never be patented, that compound. So intellectual property for certain industries, like life sciences, is critical. So if you've got something you think can be protected, you should get it, file a provisional, as soon as you can. The priority date is important too, right, for filing. So if it's UF grad students and faculty, UF Innovate has a $8 million a year, again, backing up those core values of discovery and innovation. The university puts an $8 million a year budget for protecting IP within UF. So the university can do that on its own risk. And then if a company forms or a big company wants to license it, then they will pay the university back those back patent costs possibly. So the university will front those initial patent costs.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
one more.
Hi, how's it going? Jackson, this question is for you. While you were growing in your success, what was the habit or the skill that served you in that period the most?
So you may have heard a little bit of this from the other Brian earlier today, but the work-life balance. So I was an entrepreneur, started a company, borrowed heavily all the money I had till I didn't have money and had to reach out and borrow money from friends and family to get a company off the ground, right? The concept of work-life balance for a successful entrepreneur, in my mind, doesn't exist. So yeah, you have to go all in, complete focus, and that's not for everybody. I meet people often and they want to do that. I'm like, do you really realize the risk that you're putting yourself into? So I think, at least my experience was, it had to be 100% effort. You know, a lot of sleepless nights. I saw a deal a couple years ago, technology I thought was really interesting, and went home to my wife and said, hey, I think I want to be a CEO again. I've done it 4 times. And she literally said, no, you're not. Anyway, I sleep maybe a lot more comfortably, not like a baby, you know, like maybe more through the night now. So, anyway. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Brian, Jackson, thank you both for being here so much. I know you guys are super busy, so thank you. Give them a round of applause.